Hi, it's another Friday, and after a one-week hiatus, that means we're back with another edition of the Zogby Report, Real and Unscripted, the United States of Democracy. Question mark. How you doing today?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. Got a lot to talk about, and I'm just gonna wing it. So it's after Labor Day, of course, and the traditional start of the fall election season. And interestingly, we are at equilibrium as far as the battle for Congress is concerned. And I say interestingly because pundits have been predicting gloom and doom for the president's party, the Democrats, in November. And what we see in key battleground states in the Senate is that there has been a serious tightening up. In fact, several of the aggregators of polls suggest a 71% chance at this moment in time that the Democrats retain control of the Senate. And then as far as the congressional races are concerned, congressional generic, not a lot of polling coming out of some of the key races, but a suggestion that it's likely that Republicans regain control of the U.S. House, but it's competitive, meaning that both the Senate and the House are competitive, and that kind of would defy history for a first congressional election after a new president. So I just want to do a quick rundown, quickly, state by state. We start, of course, with the fact that there's been a somewhat of a rebound in President Biden's numbers. Last time, well, not last time we were together, but, mid-August he was in the 38% approval category, hovers around 43%, meaning he's kind of consolidating his base. But I want to take a bunch of states that we have already talked about and update them now that the primary season is really officially over. So we're going to go east to west. So we start with New Hampshire. New Hampshire just had a primary, and retired General Republican Donald Baldock won that primary, 1 or 2 percentage points. He went in ahead by at least 10 to 12 percentage points the day before. Momentum was against him, but now he has officially won and has the right then to challenge the incumbent former governor and running for re-election, Maggie Hassan. Interestingly, brand new poll just out yesterday indicates that Hassan is ahead by 4 or 5 percentage points, still quite a bit undecided. Here's the interesting thing about Baldock. He ran as an election denier 2020, and that was the basis of his campaign. He had been leading by as much as 22 points. And then you started to slowly see the establishment, Republican establishment-backed candidate, Morse, get closer and closer and closer to what I mentioned was a razor-thin Baldock victory. But within 24 hours after Baldock's Republican primary victory, he announced that he is no longer an election denier. Joe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States. He had done a lot of research. We know what that means. That means independents are critical everywhere, but they're particularly critical in an independent state like New Hampshire, and the realization that A, close primary after all, and B, now it's time for independents to come out to vote in the general election, that election denial is not going to be a winning argument for him. Will that work? Will Baldock be able to appeal to independents and moderates, or has he just denied his authenticity as a candidate? Still a close race there. So we have a mirror image in Pennsylvania. Same sort of thing. I've mentioned this before. We've talked about it. John Fetterman, lieutenant governor, very different character, 6'9", three-quarter length shorts, hoodie, had a stroke, a socialist, self-declared, running against Dr. Oz. Let's just say blah, blah, blah about Dr. Oz. It's already been said before. There's another battle that transcends ideology. I think that's authentic versus inauthentic. At least that's how it's coming out. Fetterman leads anywhere from 5 percentage points to 9 percentage points. It's still competitive, but the National Republicans have withdrawn the money that they were going to spend on behalf of Dr. Oz and kind of thrown up their arms in the air, not really embracing him as a candidate. Right next door, we have Ohio. That's another battle, and that's an ideological battle, a traditional, not quite progressive, but traditional Democrat, Tim Ryan, a member of the House, running for Senate against J.D. Vance, the author of the Hillbilly Elegy, who has transformed and become an election denier, a MAGA conservative. Right along, J.D. Vance has been leading, 5 or 6 percentage points. Most recent polls have it too close to call. Brand new one out just this morning has Vance leading by a couple of points, but one done last week has Tim Ryan, the Democrat, leading by 5 points. So it's one of those things, based on turnout. Let's head south. We have North Carolina, where we have Joe Budd running against Sherry Beasley. She is a former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. Budd has been leading, and leading right along until the recent 10 days, and Beasley has come out ahead in a couple of polls. Whatever it is, it's very, very close. North Carolina is going to be dependent for Beasley on the transplant vote and of course, the very large black vote. Florida is competitive. Now, there was always an assumption that that Florida Senate race was leaning Republican right along. Marco Rubio would win re-election against the sitting Congresswoman, former impeachment manager, and former police chief of Orlando, Val Demings. But there have been 3 polls out now with Demings actually leading. Your guess is as good as mine. What we do know is that in all of these instances, Democrats are out fundraising Republicans thus far. Okay, so we're in Florida. We're shifting up to Wisconsin, way up north. Ron Johnson, viewed by many as the most vulnerable Republican. He's running against the lieutenant governor by the name of Mandela Barnes. Another instance where the lead is seesawing, but seesawing 2 points in one direction, 2 points in another direction. Too soon to call. Missouri, I think, has been resolved. Missouri Republicans were worried that their former governor, who had to resign because of a scandal, would win the primary. And many Republicans were prepared to abandon him. But they have nominated instead a fellow named Schmidt. Schmidt is leading handsomely. So there's 3 more races. Mark Kelly, incumbent senator, astronaut, twin of an astronaut, husband of Gabby Giffords, who was shot, was elected just 2 years ago and now running for a full term. He has been leading right along, the Democrat. Blake Masters, Harvard-educated Republican, MAGA, and election denier. One poll by Trafalgar, which is generally leans Republican, has Blake Masters leading by 1 percentage point. Whether that's an outlier or not, it's folks like Charlie Cook are coloring that a light blue in Arizona. Too close to call, as is Nevada. Catherine Cortez Masto against kind of the scion of a well-known Nevada family, a Republican family, Adam Laxalt. The Trafalgar poll has Laxalt leading by 1. Most polls have Cortez Masto leading, too close to call. I'm going to end finally with one that wasn't even on the radar screen, kind of iconic 3-term Senator Patty Murray, who is number 3 in the U.S. Senate, Democrat, was just assumed to be leading. And recently we see the race tightening up. She is running against Tiffany Smiley, who was running a very conservative campaign, but of late, as a Republican, she has moderated her view on abortion and not taken a more extreme position. Number 2 has kind of moved a little bit towards the center on a few other issues, but particular on that issue. And she's now within 4 points of Patty Murray and raising a significant amount of money. We're at equilibrium. Most of the pundits say Democrats hold the House. I think it's the Senate, too close to call.
Yeah.
That was a mouthful.
So where should I begin?
New Hampshire? Or just you want to paint the big picture here?
Yeah, I'll paint the big picture. I mean, if you do a kind of a word cloud summary of everything that you laid out, yeah, I mean, there's really no Democratic momentum leading ahead. It's equilibrium. It's a toss-up. Mm-hmm. And as I always like to zero in on what are the key voting bloc groups that are really going to turn this election, it really is going to come down to independents. So Biden in 2020 had a 13-point lead. Is that about right?
It was in the teens.
It was double digit. That would be according to the exit polls. Yeah, that would be according to the exit polls. He had a 13-point lead among independents. We've got this poll. We're kind of like in the middle of, trying to release and just squaring away everything. So I got to be careful.
Zogby Strategies poll, yeah.
Zogby Strategies, along with Dynata, the world's largest data collector, data provider, and I mean, let me just keep it very simple because I will go into it when it's fully released. But independents are a toss-up. Mm-hmm. They don't really lean either way. The key data point is that about 40% of them are undecided. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that? Is it because they're looking at both parties and they're seeing the weaknesses? Or have they gone back? I'm talking about about 40% undecided. Have they kind of been seesawing with whatever the momentum is being reported in the news? Roe v. Wade was overturned. I think I'm going to lean more Democrat. No, but inflation, make no mistake about it, even among them, by far, inflation is the top issue. Mm-hmm. We tested about 10 issues. Who does better? It was about 5 and 5. There were 5 issues that went to the Democrats. Again, I'm just giving very broad details here. And about 5 went to the Republicans. But it's a toss-up. And the fact of the matter is independents, by their nature, are independent because they like to sit back mm-hmm. and they like to watch. They like to wait till the last day, to 2 days before, maybe even going into the booth. Just some interesting numbers here. When we asked them, how they typically vote, about a third of them say usually or always Democrat, and about a third of them said usually or always Republican. 1/4 are truly swing voters who say equally. This is a toss-up. We have no idea what is going to happen. We can point to all kinds of momentum. We can point to all kind of blunders. But the fact that remains is that between now and Election Day, both parties are going to have their moments of momentum. Both parties are going to have their blunders. Looking at the president right now, the blunder for him is the CPI report that came out yesterday or 2 days ago, showing that, okay, yeah, gas prices came down. Well, of course they came down. They dipped into the rainy day fund called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Of course, that was going to bring gas prices down. I don't know that that's anything to congratulate the president by dipping into that. By the way, a lot of that was going to Europe. So energy is key among independents. That is a top issue of when we asked them. The other thing that I think Biden could be in trouble. Well, I mean, going back on the CPI, rent is exploding. A lot of food prices are exploding. That doesn't bode well for the president. I haven't stopped thinking about his speech on August 31st or September 1st. I've actually gone back and I've read it a couple times, even after viewing it. And I don't think that's a bright moment in not only the history of presidential speeches, but I think for him, this was the man who, on his first speech, inauguration speech, talked about unity, total 180-degree turn. I mean, everything is really heating up with the FBI. You've got, on one side, the FBI targeting the pillow guy, Mike Lindell, right, seizing his phone. They've raided the Mar-a-Lago. There's all this stuff coming out from Durham, the special prosecutor, who was talking about this Danchenko character and his shady dealings with the FBI. And so this is why independents are on the fence. They see all of this stuff going on, and it's kind of an ugly show. It's nothing really looks great for the Republicans. Nothing looks good for the Democrats, but we're going to see a lot of revelations between now and November.
And which ones will stick? Let me go through some of the issues that are the top issues and how they're playing out and how they could play out. So obviously you talked about inflation. You know, so you mentioned the CPI report where the annualized this past month inflation grew by 8.3, which was better than the previous 2 months, but not what economists and Wall Street were expecting. Inflation obviously remains a key issue, even with gas prices going down. However, are we heading toward a recession? Will there be an enabled recession as the Federal Reserve meets next week, and possibly, I don't know, I no inside track here, but possibly raises interest rates by a percentage point? This is a conundrum, and how it plays out is anybody's guess. By the same token, the number 2 issue now is abortion, playing in the Democrats' favor, stealing younger and suburban women away from away from the education issue and towards the choice issue. And we've seen some evidence of that playing out in Kansas, which we've already talked about, the Kansas anti-abortion referendum, but then as well playing out in a couple of key critical congressional races that were expected to go Republican and ended up going Democrat. How that plays out, I don't know. Number 3 is crime. Crime certainly plays in the Republicans' favor, and it could be the sleeper issue. It could be for Republicans what abortion is for Democrats. Get some of those more conservative-leaning or undecided, genuinely undecided independents out. Democrats are talking less and less, of course, about that stupid slogan that somebody coined a while back, defund the police. You even see the President of the United States eschewing that slogan, and he has, of course, right along. And then there is a specter of climate change. And to be fair, you had mentioned, that the president tapped into the oil reserve. There was a lot of pressure for him to do that, and Republicans felt legitimately that they were boxing the president in, and the president was boxed in. On one hand, releasing some of that reserve has in fact had some kind of an impact on prices at the pump. On the other hand, releasing that reserve also takes us off of the longer range climate change, and conservation and reduction of emissions goal. And so it was not an easy choice for the president to make. But those are the top four issues. And again, I don't know how, it's too soon to talk about how it's going to play out. What I do know is that when we started talking about the election earlier in the year, we were taking together a slightly different position than a lot of the other pundits who were saying it's automatically a red year, automatically a Republican wave. We were saying, hold on a second.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing we said it, because we're all holding on a second.
Yeah, and I've maintained that. I remember saying, I think it was right after Virginia, that the Republicans could be prone to hubris. They could get cocky, they could get arrogant, and look, it's a long game.
Yeah.
And it's a pinball game in between, back and forth. But the question of, is there a recession? Well, you've got to ask the people who are at the center of this storm. And today, FedEx, the CEO of FedEx came out and basically signaled that he thinks a recession is almost guaranteed. FedEx has had to, they're going to have to cut 90 offices. They're going to have to cut 5 headquarters. They're going to freeze hiring because shipments are plummeting, and they are at the center of that. What goes on with FedEx is a bellwether for the economy. Of course, we've got this other survey that's coming out, and the only data point that I'll share from 150 executives of manufacturing companies in the United States is, when asked about their expectation for an economic downturn / recession, you've got 70% who say either definitely or very likely. Another 30% who say somewhat likely.
Those are self-fulfilling.
So
Yeah.
that's the sentiment
And
from...
we did that poll for Forbes
We
and
did
for
it with,
Sometry.
well, we're gonna release these things in part. I'm just signaling. I'm really we'll do the full release. So those are the folks who are at the center of that universe and know better than anybody. That doesn't go very well for Joe Biden. Crime, yeah, I mean, we're in total agreement. Democrats don't own that issue. What's interesting about climate change is that I think most Americans are on board with the notion of climate change, but you have a loud minority and growing minority who see climate change as really an elite issue, a Davos party issue. There is a sentiment, whether it's King Charles or whether it's anybody who goes to the World Economic Forum, that, I mean, just look at the footage of that parking lot full of jets, private jets, jumbo jets. And there is a growing sentiment among Americans and other people that it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do. And that's not going to go well. I think Germany is going to be very key this winter, because what you have with Germany, a lot of this is being blamed on Russia, and I think that's preposterous. A lot of it has to do with Germany's own green policies of shutting down nuclear facilities, 6 major nuclear reactors in Germany, and setting Germany on the path of total decarbonization by whether it's 2030 or 2040. Meanwhile, Germans are setting records with Google searches for buying wood. Where can I buy wood? Because they're expecting a dark winter. And so I think what you're going to see is a shift in public sentiment around the world away from this climate change narrative where people are realizing, you know what? If we phase out oil, we're going to collapse civilization because wind and solar technology are nowhere near there yet and can't be forced there within 5 to 10 years to replace an infrastructure that has been built up over 100 years.
So what do we do? Is climate change, man-caused climate change, a reality?
Well, that is an entirely different discussion.
Yeah.
What we do is what every other energy revolution has done is let it go and play out in the marketplace and develop as it will. Using legislation to force it into existence is not going to work. It's not. You can't set 5-year plans like Stalin or Lenin did and say, well, look what happened with them. We're going to force that everybody is driving an electrical vehicle by this year. We're going to make sure that we have zero carbon output. It doesn't matter about what do we do. What I'm talking about is public sentiment. And I think the public is starting to change in terms of their immediate needs and the looming threat of a very cold, dark winter.
Okay, that means okay, that's enough. Not okay, I agree. I'll take it up another time. I'll see you.
Yeah.
You folks out there should react. Let's have a little election between now. Who's with John? And who's with Jeremy?
Well, yeah. I think it'll be about even.
Yeah,
It's a toss-up.
Toss-up. Okay. Equilibrium.
Yeah.
That's how we begin. Have a good week.